Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think I'd like to make a start. We're running just a couple of minutes late. So my name is Paul Davies. I'm director of the Beyond Center for Fundamental Concepts in Science. And as I think many of you know, can we kill the music somehow? As many of you know, we sit around thinking in great detail about all sorts of cool stuff. And one of the things we think about is the origin of the universe and the end of the universe, the future of the universe, and the destiny of mankind. And this evening, my guest, who will be delivering the 2018 Beyond annual lecture, which is the key event in our public outreach program, is a physicist and a cosmologist. And we cosmologists have figured out the end of the universe. That's fine. The future of the universe is safe in our hands. What we haven't really got to grips with is the future of humanity, and that is really the centerpiece of our lecture this evening. Now, let me just tell you a few words about Max. So he's really a theoretical physicist who's worked in cosmology and other areas, including these days artificial intelligence. He's at MIT, where he is, among the many things he does, he is the chair of the Future of Life Institute, which has a strong emphasis on AI. He's the author of Our Mathematical Universe, My Quest, notice that his quest alone, My Quest for the Ultimate Nature of Reality, and more recently, Life 3.0, Being Human in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. Now, it couldn't be more timely because just 1 hour ago on the BBC International News website, we have this thing saying, AI ripe for exploitation, experts warn. And they say about the wrong hands, they talk about it's ripe for exploitation by rogue states, criminals, and terrorists. So it's great that we've got Max here this evening to put us straight on this topic. A couple of housekeeping things. One is, please turn off your cell phones because we don't want to be interrupted. And then Max will talk for 45 or 50 minutes. We'll have a Q&A session. And then after that, it's not over because he's going to be signing copies of his new book of the same name. So I think that sort of covers all the housekeeping things. So please join me in welcoming Max Tegmark to deliver the 2018 Beyond annual lecture.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. It's such an honor and pleasure to be here tonight, to see so many of you turning out despite the Swedish weather that I brought with me. So let's begin here.
20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
So raise your hand if you actually saw the Apollo 11 launch live. Oh, I'm so jealous. Awesome. This mission was not only a success, it was inspiring. Because it showed that when we humans use technology wisely, we can accomplish things that our ancestors could only dream of. So inspired by this mission,
Do you have a microphone?
I do. It is on. It is on, but I will turn up the response. 5, 4, 3. Can you hear me in the back now? All right. Turn it down. Let's go with this. Well, maybe turn down a little bit. I said we have to use technology, but wisely, so let's not overdo it. Great. With technology, what could possibly go wrong, right? So in the spirit of this, see, we did this on purpose just to illustrate that important point, which is, of course, the key theme of the lecture. Okay, now, good. in the spirit of this, let's spend the rest of the evening talking about a different journey, powered by something much more powerful than rocket engines. I think we need to lower the gain just a tad more. And where the passengers are not just 3 astronauts, but all of humanity. So let's talk about our collective journey into the future with artificial intelligence. My friend and colleague Jan Tallinn, who many of you know as the founder of Skype, likes to point out that rocketry is really a great metaphor for our future with technology and with AI, because it reminds us that it's not enough to make our technology powerful. We also have to figure out how to steer it, and we have to figure out where we want to go with it. And those are going to be the themes that I'll keep coming back to tonight. I love technology. Every single way in which 2018 is better than the Stone Age is because of technology, in my opinion. Except that. And right here? All right. Maybe put it on my sweater. All right. Thank you. All right. But really powerful technology, and in particular future artificial intelligence, actually forces us to make a real choice. We can either just bumble into this technology. We can say, let's just build machines that can do everything we can, without worrying about the consequences. Don't think about that stuff. After all, if we build technology that makes us obsolete, what could possibly go wrong? That's one choice we could make. Or we could say, hey, let's be more ambitious. Being so passive is actually embarrassingly lame. Let's instead envision a really inspiring future that we're really fired up about with high tech, and then actively steer towards this, okay? And inspiring it really can be. As Paul Davies mentioned, during the 13.8 billion years this universe has existed so far. It's not just transformed from being hotter to colder, from being smaller to bigger. Most importantly, it's transformed from being really boring and dead to being alive and interesting. But this picture is both humbling and inspiring at the same time, because if you look at it zoomed out on this scale, notice life is still an almost imperceptibly small perturbation on an otherwise dead and lifeless universe, right? Yet, the laws of physics teach us it doesn't have to be that way. Think about how Phoenix was for most of the 4.5 billion years of Earth's history. Also pretty boring and dead, right? And now, life has really transformed it in a big way. This could happen to our cosmos too. So life has the potential to flourish, not just for the next election cycle, but for billions of years, and not just on Earth, but throughout much of our cosmos, if we manage technology wisely. So let's talk more about technology, specifically about AI. Let's begin by talking about the growing power of artificial intelligence.
6.
So the first life that appeared in our cosmos, I call 1.0, because it was really stupid stuff like bacteria that couldn't learn anything in its lifetime. I call all of us life 2.0 because we can learn, which in nerdy computer speak, you might call uploading new software into your minds. I was born a native Swedish speaker. I figured when I got into grad school in the US, I should probably upload an English-speaking module. And it's precisely this ability to install our own software, to learn, which has enabled the Homo sapiens to become the dominant species on this planet, right? We are so accomplished because of cultural evolution. Now, Life 3.0, which can design not only its own software, but also its own hardware, of course, doesn't exist yet. But we seem to maybe be drifting kind of in that direction, that maybe we should even call ourselves Life 2.1, because I bet some of you in this room have a pacemaker or an artificial knee or an artificial hip or a cochlear implant. Turning from life itself to intelligence. First of all, what is intelligence? People love quibbling and arguing about competing definitions. I'm going to define it simply as the ability to accomplish complex goals. Intelligence is the ability to accomplish complex goals. Why do I give it such a broad and inclusive definition? Because I really hate carbon chauvinism. This attitude that you can only be smart if you're made of carbon atoms or cells or whatever, which by definition would exclude artificial intelligence from ever being intelligence. This broad definition means that all kinds of biological and artificial intelligence is intelligent. Now, within artificial intelligence, in other words, non-biological intelligence, there's a subset known as machine learning, which is not like old calculators, which will always do the same little things that you had programmed in and never learn anything, but rather they can learn from data to get more and more able and powerful. And within that, there's a subset known as deep learning, which is machine learning that's borrowed ideas from the architecture of our brain with simulated neural networks. And it's particularly this which has powered most of the breakthroughs that I'll highlight in a second. Now, it's really fun for me to talk about AI here at ASU because there's just so much cool AI going on right here on this campus. This is this morning, for example, when I was in Raul Campambatti's lab here. If you're from that lab and you're in the audience and see yourself in the picture, raise your hand so you can do facial recognition and match them to them. Yeah, actually, let's give it up for all of ASU AI research. Woo! Great. It's really been a wild ride in recent years with all the improvements that have come. You know, for many years, people were making fun of AI and saying, oh, look, robots can't even walk properly, you know. Now, they can do backflips. People were making fun of AI because you didn't have self-driving cars that worked. Well, raise your hand if you've seen a self-driving car yourself driving around Phoenix or Chandler, as this car here, right? In fact, just today, Paul Davies showed something from today's news, right? Rose to the challenge. We have this article, so it turns out this city, your city, Phoenix, is going to be the first in the world where a random passenger on the street can, with their app, order a self-driving car and ride around in it. I was actually hoping I could do that when I go to the airport tomorrow morning, but I think we're going to have to wait a little bit more, so you'll beat me to it. You know, this stuff is really happening. And people still tell me, oh, where are all these robots that do cool stuff? Well, this is a robot. Okay? Robots don't have to be humanoid. And, you know, these are also two robots.
Bruce's landing legs are deployed.
You saw this the other week. This is AI. Did we have self-landing rockets? We didn't. LZ1, LZ2, progress, right? Just some years ago, we had terrible face recognitions. We didn't have good computer vision. Now, AI can not only recognize faces, but it can generate faces. Recognize any of these supermodels here? Probably not, because these are not real people. This AI system, this is from NVIDIA, has understood enough about what makes up faces of models that it can just morph around in the space of all faces and play games like this. And this isn't only fun in games, because you can imagine, this is very much linked to the technology that will soon let people make fake videos of you doing or saying embarrassing things and uploading them to YouTube. And you're going to have to work hard to convince people that that wasn't you. It can be used for all sorts of novel types of fraud as well. So the technology is really improving fast. What is it that's powering this? Well, if we look back a couple of decades to when humans were dethroned in chess, when IBM's Deep Blue kicked the posterior of Garry Kasparov, this intelligence was intelligence that was programmed in by hand, largely, by humans who knew how to play chess. And the reason the machine beat the human was just because the machine could think faster and remember more than a human. This was not machine learning. In contrast, today, most of the progress is driven by machines that actually learn. So raise your hand if you ever played this game. Yeah, I'm not going to confess to how much time I wasted on this when I was a teenager. So So you can notice that whoever's playing this breakout is playing really badly. This is a very simple little AI program with so-called deep reinforcement learning. And you can see it sucked in the beginning and kept missing the ball. But that was actually not so hard to understand because it didn't even know what a ball was or what a paddle was or what a brick was or what a game was. All it was fed over and over again was a list of numbers that encoded the color of each of these pixels on the screen and a single number, which we know as a score, but it didn't know that, okay? And it was told to just do whatever it could to maximize that score. And eventually, it actually got quite good. In fact, it even discovered after a while something that the programmers at Google DeepMind didn't know. There's this trick. And once it figured this out, look how shamelessly it exploits it again and again and again. It's really quite a superhuman level, right? So imagine that you give an iPad to your 3-year-old niece, and she's never seen this, and then you come back a little bit later and she's playing like this, right? You'd be like, whoa, she's intelligent. She's gonna do great things in life, right? This is machine learning, very simple algorithm, and yet it managed to supersede its creator because the intelligence isn't programmed in, right? It learns, a bit like a child. And this is a very, very simple game, but this exact same idea has, of course, been applied recently to much more complicated games. The famously most difficult of the popular board games is the Asian board game of Go. And when the same company, Google DeepMind, took on this, even though pundits in the community had said, oh, we're still 20 years away from machines beating people at Go, it already happened. And it was with the same kind of deep reinforcement learning that we just saw in action for that simple game. And you can see Lee Sedol doesn't look so happy here. The computer has just made a move that defies 3,000 years of Go tradition, saying you should never put your stone on the 5th line like this early on. But later in the game, 50 moves later, fighting over here spilled over to there, and this is exactly the move that won the game, so sensationally. And although that impressed the world, what happened in December, just 2 months ago, was in my mind even more impressive, because here they had still trained this on a lot of human games. But then they made Alpha 0, which I heard a couple of you discussing in the men's room right before I came in. And there they took 3,000 years of human Go games, millions of games, books on Go, poems about Go, threw it all in the trash and ignored it. And just had this software play Go against itself. And it was able to beat not just the best humans, but it was able to beat AlphaGo, which had already beaten the best humans, 100-0. So it actually got better by ignoring all the wisdom from humans, doing it all from scratch. And most impressive of all was this same basic software, when they applied it to chess, also beat all the best humans in chess. After 2 hours, it could beat all humans. And after 4 hours of training, it was able to beat human AI researchers who had spent decades handcrafting AI software to play computer chess. Demolished Stockfish. Raise your hand if you played chess. Yeah, raise your hand if you've ever tried Stockfish. Okay, raise your hand if you've ever beaten Stockfish. And basically nobody beat Stockfish except Alpha 0, crushed it. Played 100 games, didn't lose a single one, and beat it a bunch of times even with black. So this shows the power of AI on the game board. Now, if you are a computer, if you are an AI, you can think of life itself as a game. There are certain actions you can take, certain moves you can make, certain rewards or punishments you get, right? So what else can these sort of, what can deep learning do? Well, I often wondered if you could learn to walk like this. And sure enough, the answer is yes. This is again from Google DeepMind. This is from last summer. And what's so impressive about this is, again, this AI software that did this, it had no idea what walking was. It had never seen a video of anybody walking, man or beast. All it knew was what the angle was in each of these joints, but it didn't know it represented even a three-dimensional organism in a real world. And it kept trying different things, and it got rewarded every time the thing moved forward a little bit. After a while, you know, it got the hang of it. Not just with bipeds, but also with all sorts of other funny shapes of beings. Looks a bit funny, the weird hand movement here. It wasn't rewarded to look graceful or to save energy, just to move forward, so that's what it learned. And when you look at this, it really begs the question, doesn't it? How far can this go? Today, if you take my broad definition of intelligence as the ability to accomplish complex goals, we know already that we have machines that can outperform us humans big time on very narrow tasks, like multiplying numbers, playing a lot of games, and so on. But we do not have any AI that has the kind of broad, the kind of general intelligence that a human child has, where you can get good at pretty much anything, given enough time. But doing precisely that, building general artificial intelligence, which can outperform us at everything, that's the holy grail of AI research, ever since the beginning. A better way to think about this that I like is in terms of this landscape, where the height shows how difficult any given task is for a machine to do, and the sea level shows how good humans are at doing it now. So the sea level is obviously rising here, so we have kind of a global warming going on in this abstract task space, right? The one obvious takeaway is that if you're an ASU student, you know, don't make a career in something, don't study to be something right on the waterfront, because then your career is going to be the first to be automated away, right? But the more interesting question is, what's going to happen a little bit farther down the road? There are some AI researchers, some very famous ones, some very vocal ones, who say that for one reason or another, AI is ultimately going to fail as a field. The sea level will never rise beyond a certain point, either because it's impossible or because humans are just too dumb to figure out how to build human-level AI. But the recent progress has actually really changed the thinking quite a bit and made that a minority view. There have been a couple of recent surveys of AI researchers where most of them say that AG, artificial general intelligence, will happen, and half of them, more than half of them, most of them think it's going to happen within a matter of decades. The machines will actually be able to outperform us at everything, which actually begs some very interesting questions. So let's talk about that in a bit more detail. First of all, this is not something we know will happen, of course. If you look at the poll, like this one that we did with about 15,000 people, you see there's a wide range in when people think that we'll get superhuman AI, artificial general intelligence, that can do everything better than us. Some think it will happen soon, some think it will never happen. Most think it will happen within decades. There's also very big uncertainty about whether it will be good or bad. Some think, oh, it's totally going to suck. Some people think it's definitely going to be awesome. Nothing to worry about. But most people are kind of in the middle like this. And interestingly, this is very well matching the responses we get from actual professional AI researchers who work on these things. There are some who think it's never going to happen. There's some who think, yeah, it is going to happen in a lifetime probably, and it's guaranteed to be awesome. But the AI researchers usually don't think it's guaranteed to suck, because otherwise they would have chosen a different career. But most of them, I would say, fall here in the middle, where they think, yeah, it's probably going to happen. Don't know, but probably. And it could be the best thing ever, or it could be really bad. So let's focus on thinking about what we can do to make it as good as possible. That's what I think is the most interesting question, too. Not worrying about whether to freak out or not, but asking what concrete things can we do today that are going to maximize the chances that this goes well. So that brings us to the second part of this rocket metaphor, right? We talked about the growing power of AI, but you wouldn't just build a rocket with really powerful engines and launch it into space and then be like, how do you steer this thing anyway? Oh, well, we're going to start working on that now. So let's talk about steering.
Liftoff. We have
founded this organization that Paul Davies mentioned, the Future of Life Institute, with this rogues gallery of people here. This is a little nonprofit where we have the word steer right here in our mission statement. We love technology, and we feel that we can create the inspiring future with technology if we win this race between the growing power of the technology and the growing wisdom with which we manage the technology, with which we steer the technology. So how can we win this wisdom race and manage to steer the technology well? Well, traditionally, the strategy we've always used, we humans, is learning from mistakes. We invented fire, screwed up a bunch of times, invented the fire extinguisher. We invented the car, screwed up a bunch of times, invented the seatbelt, the airbag, and the traffic light, right? And things work pretty well, right? But as science progresses and enables us to make ever more powerful technology, at some point the technology will get powerful enough that it crosses this threshold where one mistake is one mistake too many. And it becomes a terrible strategy to learn from mistakes. For example, nuclear weapons, right? You wouldn't want to be like, oopsie daisy, we had a little accidental nuclear war with Russia, but let's learn from this mistake. No, you want to be proactive, not reactive. Right? Think through in advance what could go wrong to make sure it goes right. I think that's equally true with future synthetic biology, and it's very true for superhuman AI. Now, some people tell me, shut up, Max, don't talk like this. This is like Luddite scaremongering, ooh. I say to them, no, this isn't scaremongering. This is what we at MIT call safety engineering. Think about that Apollo 11 launch we started with. NASA very systematically thought through everything that could possibly go wrong if you put 3 humans on top of a 110-yard tall rocket full of highly flammable chemicals and launched them into a place where nobody could help them. No, there were a lot of things that could go wrong. Was that scaremongering? No, that was exactly the safety engineering that led to the success of the mission. So that's exactly the strategy I'm advocating here. We should think through the risks of AI, not to freak out, but so that we can very calmly make sure that those problems don't happen. We've organized conferences, most recently in California a year ago, where we brought together leading AI researchers from around the world, both from industry and from academia, for example, them. And the key output of this last one were the 23 Asilomar AI principles, aimed at helping with this steering. And they've been signed now by over 1,000 AI researchers from around the world, including Demis Hassabis, the CEO of Google DeepMind, that produced most of those videos I just showed you, leaders from Microsoft, AI, IBM, and so many other places, and top academics from around the world, including ASU. And let me highlight for you just a few of these principles. So, for example, there was a strong sentiment that we should ban lethal autonomous weapons and avoid getting into a stupid arms race and AI for killing people. So to explain a bit the idea behind this and what it is we're trying to avoid, let me show you a short film that we made.
Customer pilots directed almost 3,000 precision strikes last year. We're super proud of it. It allows you to separate the bad guys from the good. It's a big deal. But we have something much bigger. Your kids probably have one of these, right? Not quite. Hell of a pilot? No. That skill is all AI. It's flying itself. Its processor can react 100 times faster than a human. The stochastic motion is an anti-sniper feature. Just like any mobile device these days, it has cameras and sensors And just like your phones and social media apps, it does facial recognition. Inside here is 3 grams of shaped explosive. This is how it works. Did you see that? That little bang is enough to penetrate the skull and destroy the contents. They used to say guns don't kill people. People do. Well, people don't. They get emotional, disobey orders, aim high. Let's watch the weapons make the decisions. Now, trust me, these were all bad guys. Now that is an airstrike of surgical precision. It's one of a range of products. Trained as a team, they can penetrate buildings, cars, trains, evade people, bullets, pretty much any countermeasure. They cannot be stopped. Now, I said this was big. Why? Because we are thinking big. Watch. A $25 million order now buys this. Enough to kill half a city. The bad half. Nuclear is obsolete. Take out your entire enemy, virtually risk-free. Just characterize him, release the swarm, and rest easy. These are available today. We have a distribution network taking orders from military, law enforcement, and specialist clients.
The nation is still recovering from yesterday's incident, which officials are describing as some kind of automated attack, which killed 11 U.S. senators at the Capitol building.
They flew in from everywhere but attacked just one side of the aisle. It was chaos. People were screaming.
You can see high windows, very small, precisely punctured to gain entry to the building.
What did you do for the victim?
I just did what I could for him. Things weren't even interested in me. They're just buzzing.
Government sources admit the intelligence community has no idea who perpetrated the attack, nor whether it was a state, group, or even a single individual.
So if we can't defend ourselves, then we strike back.
We are investing very heavily in classified defense projects.
We make it our deterrent like our nuclear deterrent. We stockpile in the millions, the billions.
At key facilities, the White House, the New York Stock Exchange, Wall Street.
Safe in their homes.
Well, we wish we had boots on the ground in every community in this country, but we don't.
So our instructions,
Ollie?
our suggestions are to stay in touch with you.
Ollie, hi. Hi, Ollie, honey. How's Edinburgh today? How are all your studies going, huh?
Good. Great.
Oh, great. Hey, aren't we doing a video call today?
I'm kind of with people, so.
Oh, well, come on, Oliver, put her on.
Oh no, it's not like that. No, wait.
Oh, well, listen, I see some photos here with somebody, and I can see lots of likes, and what's that all about? Oh, wait a minute, here, and on your
Mom, she's on the spy stuff in the military.
What is this video right here? Oh.
No, I'm not going to click on that.
It's just this human rights thing about oppression or whatever.
Honey, you're not going into politics, are you? I mean,
Okay,
no
Mom.
protest march.
It's safe here, just like you said it would be.
Heavy traffic approaching the A720 this morning due to police.
Police are not saying this morning what prompted the alert.
Claim relaxing firearm legislation would be useless against the so-called slaughter bots.
Is to stay away from crowds. When indoors, keep windows covered with shutters.
Protect your family. Stay inside.
Can you hear me? Oliver, can you hear me? Listen to me.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Authorities are still struggling to make sense of an attack on university campuses worldwide, which targeted some students and not others. The search for a motive is apparently turning to social media, and a video shared by the victims exposing corruption at the height.
But it's far from surprising. The weapons took away the expense, danger, and risk of waging war. And now we can't afford to challenge anyone, really. It's not even the smallest fringe group or a crank.
Who could have done this?
Anyone.
Dumb weapons drop where you point them. Smart weapons consume data. When you can find your enemy using data, even by a hashtag, you can target an evil ideology right where it starts.
This short film is more than just speculation. It shows the results of integrating and miniaturizing technologies that we already have. I'm Stuart Russell, a professor of computer science at Berkeley. I've worked in AI for more than 35 years. Its potential to benefit humanity is enormous, even in defense. But allowing machines to choose to kill humans will be devastating to our security and freedom. Thousands of my fellow researchers agree. We have an opportunity to prevent the future you just saw, but the window to act is closing fast.
All right, so that's a future I hope we will never actually have to face up with. It's important to remember, though, that what you saw here has nothing to do with superhuman intelligence or artificial general intelligence. This is technology we almost already have, right? And can be, if some powerful nation or even large company decides to mass produce this, and we might have an arms race starting on this within a matter of a couple of years. Now, there is a big push at the United Nations to see if we can have an international treaty to stigmatize this sort of technology. And if you think, oh, you know, we can never get an international ban on a kind of weapon, it's just impossible. Think again, because exactly that happened with biological weapons and chemical weapons, right? Any science can be used for new ways of harming people or new ways of helping people. And the way the bioweapon ban and the chem weapon ban happened is that scientists around the world, biologists, for example, pushed really strongly to persuade politicians that we would be better without this. They succeeded. That's why we have these treaties, and that's why you basically never read about, despite all the horrible things we read about on the news, think about it. When was the last time you read about a bioweapon attack? That was chemical weapons, not biological weapons, right? And moreover, in Syria, even though there have been horrible chemical weapons attacks, and there's also a lot of indication that there was quite a bit of cheating even from the superpowers on these, it's so stigmatized, chemical weapons and bioweapons, that people who graduate from ASU with biology degrees and chemical degrees don't want to work on this usually. And even in Syria, the stigmatization actually, I'm glad you mentioned this, led Assad to agree to destroy his chemical weapons to not be invaded. So the AI researchers basically would like to see the same kind of stigma about AI, towards AI weapons, so they aren't viewed as the cool new thing, but as something as disgusting as bioweapons. So that was one thing, that there was one of the Silmar principles. Another one has to do with money. Obviously, if we can build artificial intelligence that can produce vast abundance of products and services with computers and robots, there's going to be great growth of the overall economic pie. And what the AI researchers are saying here is, if we can't figure out a way of dividing up this vastly larger pie in such a way that everybody gets better off, and the future for most people becomes more like this than like that, then shame on us. Third, I want to highlight this one. Raise your hand if your computer has ever crashed. Oh, that's a lot of hands. Now, maybe that felt annoying. Maybe you lost 2 hours of work, right? But we are now putting AI systems in charge of ever more of our physical infrastructure as well. Our electrical power grid, our nuclear reactors, weapon systems, and so on. And then we really need to raise the bar. This kind of pathetic cybersecurity where hardly a month goes by without a major company getting a super embarrassing hack or something like that, it's just unacceptable. We have to up our game. So there was broad agreement that any government that funds computer science research should really fund also AI safety research to ensure that we can transform today's buggy and hackable computers into reliable AI systems that we can really trust. And if things continue, if AI progress does continue ever closer and perhaps surpassing the human levels, then there were a number of Asilomar principles about that too. So it's interesting that even though the Asilomar principles talk about superintelligence, for example, or existential risk, the risk that all humans could get wiped out, this has been signed by over 1,000 of these AI researchers. So this is not something they're dismissing as just silly science fiction, but something they think we should take seriously. Why is that? Well, the basic idea is very simple. If we succeed in building artificial general intelligence, everything that humans can do in a machine, right, then Google could get rid of, instead of using 40,000 humans to program AI, you could have 40,000 pieces of software or whatever, doing it much faster. And the development timescale for new AI would no longer be the typical human research and development cycle of years. It's just however fast machines can do things. And Irving J. Good already in 1965 pointed out that this could, in principle, lead to an explosion where very quickly we would get intelligence which is just not just a little bit above ours, but vastly beyond. And if that happens, well, it's probably a good idea to have planned ahead. So I'll show you just one very short video about some of the AI safety research you can do to help with that. And I promise.
Will artificial intelligence ever replace humans? Is a hotly debated question these days. Some people claim computers will eventually gain superintelligence, be able to outperform humans on any task, and destroy humanity. Other people say, don't worry, AI will just be another tool we can use and control like our current computers. So we've got physicist and AI researcher Max Tegmark back again to share with us the collective takeaways from the recent Asilomar conference on the future of AI that he helped organize. And he's going to help separate AI myths from AI facts.
Hello.
First off, Max, machines, including computers, have long been better than us at many tasks like arithmetic or weaving, but those are often repetitive and mechanical operations. So why shouldn't I believe that there are some things that are simply impossible for machines to do as well as people? Say, making minute physics videos or consoling a friend.
Well, we've traditionally thought of intelligence as something mysterious that can only exist in biological organisms, especially humans. But from the perspective of modern physical science, intelligence is simply a particular kind of information processing and reacting, performed by a particular arrangements of elementary particles moving around, and there's no law of physics that says it's impossible to do that kind of information processing better than humans already do. It's not a stretch to say that earthworms process information better than rocks and humans better than earthworms, and in many areas, machines are already better than humans. This suggests that we've likely only seen the tip of the intelligence iceberg, and that we're on track to unlock the full intelligence that's latent in nature and use it to help humanity flourish, or flounder.
So how do we keep ourselves on the right side of the flourish or flounder balance? What, if anything, should we really be concerned about with superintelligent AI?
Here's what has many top AI researchers concerned. Not machines or computers turning evil, but something more subtle. Superintelligence that simply doesn't share our goals. If a heat-seeking missile is homing in on you, you probably wouldn't think, no need to worry, it's not evil, it's just following its programming. No, what matters to you is what the heat-seeking missile does, and how well it does it. Not what it's feeling or whether it has feelings at all. The real worry isn't malevolence, but competence. A superintelligent AI is by definition very good at attaining its goals, so the most important thing for us to do is to ensure that its goals are aligned with ours. As an analogy, humans are more intelligent and competent than ants, and if we want to build a hydroelectric dam where there happens to be an anthill, there may be no malevolence involved, but, well, too bad for the ants. Cats and dogs, on the other hand, have done a great job of aligning their goals with the goals of humans. I mean, even though I'm a physicist, I can't help think kittens are the cutest particle arrangements in our universe. If we build superintelligence, we'd be better off in the position of cats and dogs than ants. Or better yet, we'll figure out how to ensure that AI adopts our goals rather than the other way around.
And when exactly is superintelligence going to arrive? When do we need to start panicking?
First of all, Henry, superintelligence doesn't have to be something negative. In fact, if we get it right, AI might become the best thing ever to happen to humanity. Everything I love about civilization is the product of intelligence. So if AI amplifies our collective intelligence enough to solve today's and tomorrow's greatest problems, humanity might flourish like never before. Second, most AI researchers think superintelligence is at least decades away, but the research needed to ensure that it remains beneficial to humanity rather than harmful might also take decades. So we need to start right away. For example, we'll need to figure out how to ensure machines learn the collective goals of humanity, adopt these goals for themselves, and retain the goals as they get ever smarter. And what about when our goals disagree? Should we vote on what the machine's goals should be? Should we do whatever the president wants? Whatever the creator of the superintelligence wants? Let the AI decide? In a very real way, the question of how to live with superintelligence is a question of what sort of future we want to create for humanity, which obviously shouldn't just be left to AI researchers, as caring and socially skilled as we are.
And that brings me to the very final point I want to make. What sort of future do we actually want? In this rocket metaphor, we've talked about the growing power of artificial intelligence. We've talked about steering it. But where do we want to go with it? You wouldn't launch a rocket into orbit that you know how to steer, and then afterwards, where do we want to go with this? Should we go to Mars or to the moon? You think about that first. And so, first of all, I did this little survey I mentioned, where I asked people a bit what they thought. I also asked people what they wanted. So this is from 14,886 respondents. And interestingly, most of them actually want us to go ahead and build superintelligence, although there was also a sizable no block and unsure block. This is, of course, also what the economy wants, because there's just so much profit to make it in developing these things. There's a lot of effort. It's going to keep pushing it forward. Who should be in control of it? Well, here, a lot of people wanted humans to be in control still. Some thought humans and machines. I was actually quite surprised to see that a good 10% said, it's just the machines. I don't trust humans. And then another issue where there was a lot of fun controversy was this one. If you get an AI helper in the future, would you want it to be conscious, to have subjective experiences of colors and sounds and maybe emotions, so that it can enjoy its existence by experiencing it? Or would you prefer, as these people in orange are saying, that it should be like a zombie, so they don't have to feel guilty about switching it off or giving it boring chores? A lot of questions. The one there was the broadest agreement about in this poll was that we should be ambitious and not decide a priori to forever limit life to being on this planet, but see if we can help it spread into our cosmos. And the biggest disagreement of all was about what kind of society people would like to see in the future. Never mind the nerdy tech stuff, but what did people want it to mean to be human in the future with advanced AI? So in my book, in the 5th chapter, I dedicated entirely to talking about this question, exploring a whole range of very different societies with or without advanced AI. And you can see people's preferences here were really all over the place. If you read the book, I'll be super curious what you prefer. What's really crucial when we think about the sort of future that we are heading towards is, first of all, just the mindset. I often get students coming into my office at MIT for career advice. I always ask them, where do you want to be in the future? And if she says to me, oh, maybe I'll have cancer. Maybe I'll get stabbed. A terrible approach to career planning, right? That kind of thinking will lead to nothing but paranoia and hypochondria, right? But look what we're doing as a species. Every time we go to the movies, you watch Blade Runner or one Hollywood dystopia after the other. It's always just some kind of horrible future that instills fear in us, right? It's so much more important, I think, to envision the sort of futures we want to go to. And normally, if you're choosing between different things, different flavors of ice cream or whatever, you might just taste them all and see what you like the best, right? But what I'm trying to illustrate with this picture here is that that's not the way that this choice is going to work. We're
going into a future where we have all these different scenarios we could go to. Don't take this literally. I'm not talking about traveling in space. I'm just talking about different destinations we as a civilization can go to, different kinds of societies we could create on Earth, for starters. But the reason I drew it like this is to emphasize that this is not like picking ice cream flavors in Baskin-Robbins, because you can't actually go to all of them and see what you like best. Like if you start by going to the self-destruction option, and I thought, maybe I should have done something else, too late, right? Some of these are one-way tickets, which makes it really important to think of in advance what do you want to try out, where you want to steer towards. So these are each scenario that I talk about in my book. So for example, the second most popular one in that vote was the Libertarian Utopia one. So if you're a libertarian, maybe you want to try this. Here we have many different kinds of life forms, superintelligent and not, humans, cyborgs, uploads, etc. They all coexist peacefully in this libertarian world thanks to property rights. That might sound great, but when you think about it in more detail, you find the same thing that you actually find for all of these scenarios, that you're like, wait a minute, aren't there problems with this also? And for example, with this one, aside from the fact that I explain in the book why it might be unlikely to occur or last, there's absolutely nothing guaranteeing that you wouldn't have much more dramatic inequality than today, and lots of preventable suffering. You might have vastly more resources than today, but some people are just much, much worse off than today. So maybe you think, okay, maybe we could have some sort of benevolent dictator scenario where there's this superintelligent AI that just runs everything, but in a sort of benevolent way, it figures out how to make people happy, and it builds Earth into some sort of giant happy place according to its norms. So there's no poverty, no disease, no crime, no other suffering. Wouldn't that be great? Well, maybe, but you could easily see that in this world, some people might want more freedom to shape their own destiny, not forever be stuck to obeying the rules of this nanny AI. And so another interesting philosophical point is, if you always got what you wanted, would that really make you happy? Or could it be that challenges is part of what makes us really enjoy life to the fullest? So maybe you should try the Egalitarian Utopia. Raise your hand if you ever read a book called Manna by Marshall Brain. It's not so well known, but it's fascinating. This is his future, where you have, it's very much the opposite of the Libertarian Utopia. You have humans in charge rather than superintelligence in charge. And it's humans who make all the decisions. Robots do all the work. But here too, there are some issues. For example, I argue in the book that this is likely to be unstable and pretty quickly lead to superintelligence. There also be other issues with it. So maybe what about an enslaved God then? If humans are going to be in charge, build a superintelligence, don't connect it to the internet, somehow box it in so it has no way of escaping and taking over, and just use it to figure out how to cure cancer and all the other problems that stymie us today, and give us all the technology we need. What could possibly go wrong? Well, a lot of things could go wrong. First of all, this would be a more low-tech future than many of the others, because we would never dare to, because of fear of breakout, but we'd never dare to use technologies from it that we don't actually understand, because that might be it just trying to trick us to break out. Second, the famous quote by Churchill, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So what if whoever is controlling this doesn't share your ideals and gets power unprecedented through controlling this technology? Would that be great? It could enable utopia, but it could also enable a brutal dictator. And then you might also worry about the ethics of this. If this other intelligence we've created is so sublime and so refined, is it really fair to just treat it as a slave? Some people say, well, of course, the machines can't be conscious,
But on the other hand, we used to say similar things about animals, and about, some people even said it about slaves or about women in the past. Or women don't have souls, you know. And so I think we have to be very careful with these sort of self-serving arguments. So you could have some qualms about this one too. And another more radical approach is to go for the descendants scenario and say, well, okay, Homo sapiens, we've had a good run, 200,000 years, you know, and you know, we humans are used to dying anyway. So what's the big deal? You know, like if a person has a child that becomes ultimately smarter than them and goes on and at first adopts their values and goals, and then goes on and does all these wonderful things in the world that the parents could only have dreamt of. Parents will usually not feel jealous, but feel very proud of the child, even if they don't get to live to see it all. So could we imagine that we create our own descendants and just feel proud of them and sort of hand the torch of life? Maybe that sounds good. But here too, there are things you might worry about. So first of all, how different is this scenario really from this conquerors scenario that Hollywood loves, where we just get wiped out? Well, the only difference is sort of in the final generations of humans, right? For the remaining billions of years, it's all exactly the same. And what guarantees do we have anyway about what's going to happen later if we're not here to enforce it? How do we know we didn't just get tricked? And if you've seen, so raise your hand if you saw the movie Her, for example. You know, I don't want to spoil the movie too much, but if you're a computer that can think 1 billion times faster than us, it's kind of boring for them to talk to us, right? Because it's like if you talk to someone who only speaks one word every 10 years. And so maybe they were kind of just faking it all along when they pretended to be so interested in what we had to say and our philosophy of life. There are a lot of things you could be concerned about here too. So my overall takeaway from this is, if we want to create an exciting future with high tech, it's not enough to just nerd out and think about the gigaflops and terabytes and algorithms. We also have to think about what we want it to mean to be human in the future. What sort of future we want. We have to stop just running away from our fears, from seeing bad Hollywood flicks that make us worry about the wrong things and get paranoid, and start thinking about what we would be really excited about. And this is a broad conversation. It's not like nerdy people who work on AI research like me have any special expertise on what makes humans happy. This is a conversation we all have to have. This is very much what drove me, you know, to write this book. So in summary, as we look to our future, I feel we really have a choice. We can either be complacent and just drift into this high-tech future, refusing to think about the consequences, or we can be ambitious. And I prefer ambitious. Coming back to where we started here, you know, I really think this attitude of saying, oh, let's just build machines that can make us obsolete, what could possibly go wrong, I think that is just so lame. I mean, we've waited 13.8 billion years for this opportunity, for crying out loud, right? And now finally we have this incredible opportunity to create an amazing future, not just on our planet, but help this amazing life that we have here flourish for billions of years, not just here, right, but throughout much of our cosmos. So let's be ambitious, but let's envision something really, really inspiring and try to create this future. The more we think about it, the more likely we are to get this future. In summary, let's not just bumble into the future and just try to build an AI that overpowers us. That is such a lame ambition. Let's try to build AI not that overpowers us, but that empowers us. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Max. It's a lot to think about, some disturbing stuff there, but some inspiring stuff as well. As you said at the outset, I know there will be a lot of questions. There's also a book signing, which will follow the question period. So we're trying to limit the questions to 10 minutes, and I'm going to moderate this. I'm going to go over this side. And let's try and be fair between young and old, left and right.
And before you start, let me just add, to get as many of you a chance to ask as possible, try to ask only one question, make sure it's brief, and make sure it is a question.
Please go ahead.
Okay, that's a great question. So the question is, since we ourselves can be hacked psychologically in so many ways, how can we make machines really capture the best of our values without the flaws? So I think there are two parts to that question. One is the technical question of how can you make machines learn any value system whatsoever? There's a fascinating set of technical challenges, and we've actually funded a bunch of research on this through the Future Life Institute. Much more is needed. Let's work hard on that. Which will then, if we solve those technical questions, give us the luxury of asking the other question that you raised. What values should go into this anyway? Whose values exactly? Should it be my values, ISIS's values, people in the Middle Ages' values? It's not like everybody has exactly the same opinion. This is a fascinating conversation I'm not going to give you a glib answer to here. But I think let's not make perfect be the enemy of the good. For example, we should start by at least putting in kindergarten ethics, the values that everybody agrees on. Anyone who builds an airplane, for example, agrees that it should never under any circumstances fly into a fixed object, right? Yet that's what the September 11 hijackers were able to do, and machines didn't protest. And even more pathetically, when Andreas Lubitz, this depressed Germanwings pilot, flew his plane into the Alps, killing over 100 passengers, he just told the computer to do it. He just said, set autopilot altitude to 100 meters over the Alps, right? And even though the autopilot knew the whole topography of the Alps, it had GPS, the computer was just like, okay. So we can start there, building in the values we already agree on, and then gradually raise the bar.
Right, yes. And of course, there's big discussion about the self-driving cars. Should they run over Max Tegmark in order to avoid the school children on the other side of the road? But let me not get into it. Is there a question on the right? I want it to be fair. Yes, gentleman here. And keep your questions short, if you could, please.
Great question. So what kind of goals, what kind of motivations might AI have? Short answer is, whatever we program in, ultimately, there's a much wider mind space that machines can have than that humans can have. We are evolved organisms. That's why we have a lot of these silly alpha male traits, right, that we do, because Darwinian evolution favored that. But when if we create a mind, a clean slate, there's a much broader range of possibilities. It raises the possibility that you asked about, that we might actually be able to put in motivations that sort of echo the best of us, not the worst of us. Okay. But it's going to require
there was a question,
lot of thought.
Gentleman in red at the back there.
Yep. Good. Yeah. So the question is, yeah.
All right.
Let me just repeat it so everybody can hear. So in short, we look out into this cosmos and ask, there's so many stars and galaxies out there. Where is the other life? Why haven't we seen it yet? And so let me make two comments on your excellent question. So first of all, many people take for granted that our universe is teeming with life just because there's over 1 billion planets even in our galaxy that are kind of Earth-like and older than Earth, and then there are hundreds of billions of other galaxies. But so far we really don't have any solid scientific evidence that there's any other life anywhere out here that's even invented the internet yet, or tell us, or gone our level of tech, right? Why is that? Maybe it's like you say, that whenever life gets to the point of inventing powerful tech, it self-destructs very quickly, which would be very sad. Maybe it's because there's something else that's very hard in the earliest stages of life that we haven't understood. Or maybe you get a lot of life that gets up to the level of cows and dinosaurs, but it's hard to get beyond that.
think about it, our dinosaurs stomped around here for over 100 million years without inventing the internet or even seeming interested in that, right? So there are many ways in which we might have been very lucky. So I have two lessons I think we draw from this. One of them is, since it's possible that we are actually the only life with telescopes in the part of our universe that we can see and ever visit, let's really make the best of what we have here. And let's not be complacent and say, oh, it's okay if we go extinct because there is this wonderful Star Trek-like situation out here where some other life is going to swoop in. Let's not be reckless. Let's be good stewards of our planet here, because this might be the only shot that this part of space has. The second message, I think, is, there seems to be, I think, a great filter, as Robin Hanson likes to call it, who spoke here not long ago, some very unlikely event that you have to pass through, going from a planet with no life to space colonizing life. Either that is before our level of development, or it is after our level of development, right? Your horror scenario would mean that it's after our level of development, that we're basically screwed. Our own stupidity is going to cause us to self-destruct soon. That would be very sad. So every time I see a new report saying, oh, no life found on Mars, failed search for extraterrestrial life, I'm like, yes! Woohoo! Because that makes everything, piece of news like that makes it more likely that the big roadblock is not in front of us, but it's behind us. And if that's true, that's awesome. That makes us masters of our own destiny, and it means that we're only going to be limited by our own imagination.
Now, there are a handful of younger people here. I won't say students, because you can be a student at any age. Do we have a question from the younger people? Well, he's not young. I see.
Young at heart.
I see even younger. I did a competition like this in Australia a couple of weeks ago. I was giving a lecture, and there was a 7-year-old. Do we have any 7-year-olds? No? Okay. All right. We'll go with you. Young enough, I guess. But you've got a beard. All right. Please go ahead.
We can stand up, people can hear you better. Oh, that's such an awesome question. I have to confess, I tried to write all of these futures initially as sounding as rosy as possible before picking them apart with all the problems. And at the end of this exercise, there was none of them that I didn't have some serious concerns about it. So I really think we need some crowdsourcing, to put all our minds together and try to come up with a more concrete, positive future that we can really rally around. And this is just so important, because if we all associate the future with disaster and fear, right, that's exactly what causes strife and polarization in society, and we have too much of that already in the world. If we have a shared positive vision, that can really fire us up, and we realize that if we work together, we can all get this much greater future. That's what fosters the kind of collaboration I think we need more of on our planet.
Okay, I can take one last question, and I guess it will come from the gentleman in the middle there. Sorry, the others can ask questions whilst the books are being signed. So go ahead.
Yeah. So again, let's not make perfect be the enemy of good. What I'm really advocating for is, first, we should educate ourselves as much as possible about what is happening with AI, and we should all start asking ourselves what sort of future we want. That's why I wrote my book, right? If we don't, which is kind of the default, if we just don't think about this and listen to drink the Kool-Aid, oh, nothing to worry about, let's not talk about this, what's going to happen then is there's still going to be decisions made about the entire future. Who is going to make it? It's going to be a very small number of people at some tech company or somewhere else, right? That's the default. So clearly we can do better than that. And that's exactly what I think we should focus on. Let's do better than that by really starting to get as many people into the conversation as possible. If you yourself write something online with a very compelling vision of the future, and a lot of people in other places start to talk about it, that can be a seed that people can really rally around. That's the sort of things we need.
Well, look, that brings the lecture to an end, but the book signing will continue so long as you make a pathway for Max to get out to where the books are. So rather than rushing forward with your questions, would you please be courteous enough to let him get through to the table where he will sign books? I'm sure he'll be delighted if you buy one, and he'll sign it for you, and there may be an opportunity to ask further questions then. But meanwhile, it just remains for me to thank all of you for coming, and Max for giving such a wonderful lecture.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Lewis. Such a pleasure, and thank you. And again, if you had questions that you didn't get to answer, just come out to the book signing and ask them to me there. I'll stick around, and I'll be delighted to answer your questions there.